Hello, I'm Kads, and welcome to today's video. So, as predicted, we did get a challenge tournament in this dead period during the fusion, and it is a spider tournament featuring the Telerian Alliance. Now, the Telerians, for those who are less familiar, here at the top, are the top 4 factions in the index of the Bannerlords, High Elves, Sacred Order, and Barbarians. Now, unfortunately, there's no Void Shard in this one either, just like the last one, but there is some Eternal Soul Essence being offered up at 1800 points, and if you have a relatively easy group, and you can see here that we barely have anyone being active right now, you do have a decent shot to finish in the top 4 and get some 6-star Relentless gear. So let's head over to the Spider's Den, where you can see the teams that I've come up with. I did not bother trying to do stage 20 or stage 25, I should say. I didn't bother trying to do stage 25 because there's a surprising lack of turn meter controllers in the top 4 factions there in the Telerians. So I opted for stage 20. However, if you're earlier in the game, stage 16 is extremely viable. They're both spirits, so there's no void benefit here for stage 16, but 16 is much easier, and you can basically just AoE the spiderlings and just keep doing DPS on the boss in the meantime. So it's a lot easier to do for those who are more in the early game, but stage 20 is perfectly viable to work. So I built a team for both. But for stage 20, let me double check this. That's the 16 team. There you go. For stage 20, we have this team here, where we have 200 in the lead. I have Mordecai as my AoE HP burner. We have Armiger as our primary turn meter control and enemy max HP champion. We have Soul of the Drakes, our Classico, who has the decreased speed on the A1, as well as a chance to deplete turn meter as well. And then we brought in an ally attacker, actually, which is something I didn't think I needed, but it actually ended up working fairly well. So just more chances for Armiger to A1, essentially. Now, Tuhanarok, obviously she's a great champion, but a lot of you don't have her. But the real purpose she serves here is just being a decreased attack champion, because we don't have any CC aside from Syl, occasionally landing some stuns. And so we want to be in a position where the Spiderlings, once they go after Mordecai and or Lonotharl, because they're both Force, and this is a Spirit stage, once the Spiderlings go after one of them, they will not die. But even if they do, still the Drakes can pick them back up, and so we're not really concerned about that happening, but in testing thus far, that has not really occurred. So this team takes about 1 to 2 minutes depending on RNG. 1 minute is more for the good RNG of all the A1s decreasing turn meter and not getting resisted. 2 minutes is more if something goes wrong and the spider might get a turn. So let's go ahead and run this for you so you can see this team in action. So we do kick off with the ally attack, so that gives me 2 chances because Tuhanarok and Syl the Drakes both have a chance to land decreased speed on the A1. So we start off with a pretty decent chance, to land decreased speed, so that's on the boss. Now we have Tuhanarok follow up with the decreased attack. It did not spread decreased attack, but that's fine because we have Syl as the primary stun and CC champion. So even if Mordecai looks like he's the tank for now, but even if he does take some damage, it's not a big deal. The Syl passive is going to heal him, as well as Tuhanarok with her A1. She's always going to place continuous heals on whoever is going to be the target. So AoE HP burn is out there, so we're slowly ticking down on them. They're burning their HP of the main spider. We're getting some unlucky weak hits from Mordecai, who does have a decreased turn meter on the A1. I do make sure to force Armiger's A2 so that he actually uses it to decrease the enemy max HP of the main spider, and I also turned off Mordecai's A2 because we do not want him to reduce the turn meter of the spiderlings, because we want them to burn as much as possible. So there was the second ally attack. So again, that's primarily to get a little bit more turn meter reduction out of Armiger and potentially Mordecai and potentially Syl the Drakes. Those are not 100%, so that's why it's not always happening, and particularly because Mordecai is weak affinity, it may or may not actually happen at all. So it looks like they're switching not stun targets, they're switching targets there, or tanks. And I think we're going to be just over 1.5 minutes here. Yep, last turn meter reduction and 1 more spider should, or Mordecai finishes it off. So there you go. 90 seconds. Not the best team, but it's what I could come up with, and with the limitations of basically minimal turn meter control in the Telerians. As I mentioned, I did also create a team for stage 16, which is more, as you can see, AoE damage focused. So we brought in Royal Guard for the enemy max HP to pair with Armiger and his enemy max HP as well. We have a couple of AoE champions, but Hoscarol is also providing increased defense. He was a previous fusion, by the way, epic fusion. And he provides increased defense so that Armiger hits a little bit harder with his enemy max HP hit. And he also provides some potential CC, again, to either kill the spiderlings or reduce their animation time. So let's go ahead and run this too. We have Deacon in the lead as well for the decreased defense AoE, as well as the Leech on the A1, so that if anything goes wrong, which it shouldn't, because we're substantially faster than this stage, if anything goes wrong, we do have Leech and we can heal up. So Armiger is going to be the primary target of the spiderlings whilst they are alive. But we start off with the AoE from Royal Guard there, so we kill all the spiderlings. We lead in with Armiger's A2, and we're basically 75-60% of the way there. Fenax is just a DPS. He's just an A1 machine here, or at least I have him open with the A1, and then after that I have him go in with the A2 just in case there's some spiderlings live to clear them out. So pretty much the fight's over. Spiders are already half dead, and we're just kind of chunking them down. So Deacon goes in, we debuff again. Fenax takes his turn, pops the AoE, and kills a lot of the spiderlings. So again, we're just reducing animation time as far as them attacking, but they're still going to get the chances to potentially you still get the animations of them spawning in, which can take some time. So this run, just like the other one, usually takes about a minute, depending on RNG, and there we go. So minute and 5 seconds, so pretty quick. Mostly or more focused on AoEs and a little bit of enemy max HP, which is not as effective on the higher stages, but Royal Guard is doing dual purpose because he can also just kill the spiderlings as well, so benefits there. So here are the champions that I used and the builds that they have on them, and I do want to emphasize at this point that I typically don't build champions specifically for these tournaments. I just usually throw together who's around and who fits, and so I didn't have to adjust anyone's gear or anything. They were built as they were for other content, and they worked perfectly well for these purposes. So starting here with Deacon, we have total stats of around 48,000 HP, 3k on the defense, 272 on the speed, and 458 on the accuracy, double perception and speed arena-ish build. We have my Reflex Royal Guard here, 36k on the HP, 4300 on the attack, 230 on the speed, full crit rate, 252 on the crit damage, and 359 on the accuracy. Doom Tower is his primary role, but I do for Dark Fae, but I do also use him in other areas just as a wave DPS nuker, Fire Knight as well, Fire Knight 25. Next, we have Mr. Hoscarol, who's in double perception and an immortal set here. He is built for damage, so 37k on the HP, 4.4k on the defense. He is defensive based, 236 on the speed, full crit rate, and only 190 crit damage, which is somewhat unfortunate, but that's all I could get in his build, and 340 on the accuracy. I do use him on my high level or Doom Tower hard wave stages for auto clears, so reaction ring as well, which is kind of cool. Fenax, just kind of in a basic savage set, nothing fancy there, not my best set, not my worst set, but 31k on the HP, 4500 on the attack, 192 on the speed, full crit rate, 234 on the crit damage. So he is built for arena. Next, we have my Doom Tower Armiger, specifically Scarab King, and he is in a destroy set with perception. So we get 31k on the HP, 3.2k on the defense. Again, he is defense based, 198 on the speed, full crit rate, 207 on the crit damage, and 357 on the accuracy. And once again, I did forget to show the masteries. On Armiger, I went all the way down to War Master. I used to have Flawless Execution, but I switched over to War Master just because I get the additional bonus damage from War Master. Fenax has Helm Smasher, as does Hoscarol, built him like a nuker, Flawless Execution on Royal Guard, enemy max HP champion, and War Master on the Deacon. My Tuhanarok is in a triple perception set, built primarily for Hydra Clan boss, so 58k on the HP, 3.5k on the defense, and she is a support, 254 on the speed, 450 on the resistance, and 340 on the accuracy. She has War Master as well. I have Lonotharl, who I primarily use in Scarab King, but also is just one of my main ally attackers. And he has War Master as well. It's built in a double speed set at the moment. 71k on the HP. He is HP based. 222 on the defense there. 257 on the speed. Full crit rate, so a little bit of damage out of him. 138 on the crit damage and 434 on the resistance. He doesn't need any accuracy, so I usually opt to build resistance on those types of champions. Next, we have my Mordecai in a really weak reflex set, but it does the job. He's kind of my reflex mule at the moment, so whatever is left over he gets. 41k on the HP, 2500 on the defense, 225 on the speed, and 326 on the accuracy. I don't use him on my like super main Hydra teams. He's more on the lower level normal, or eventually when I get to Nightmare, he's going to be on the hard team. So I don't really care that much about the quality of his gear just yet. And on him, I went all the way down to War Master as well. So now, if you're wondering, I don't have these champions, I can't make this team, who do I use? Let's talk about some alternatives. So starting off with the nuker category, if you're doing the stage 16 strategy, just use whoever you have. In my case, I had Fenix built already and Hoskro built already, so I just used both of them. But you could even use Rhonda, for example, if you want to use more of the free given to you champions. So anyone who does AoEs on a relatively consistent basis is enough to kill the Spiderlings on stage 16. And you might, if you're only running one DPS, you might need a protection champion or of some sort, like Syl. But generally speaking, a couple of AoE nukers, and you're good to go. I should highlight the enemy max HP champions. We already talked about my Royal Guard, but if you're lucky enough to have him, Septimus is the king of the nukes when it comes to bosses. So on 4-turn cooldown, Holy Sword hits ridiculously hard, and he does more if they're, I think, below 50%. Yeah, or over 50%. So if the enemy is over 50%, he does 30% more damage. So that is massive. So if you have him, he's great for enemy max HP if you're going more of the stage 20 route. For turn meter control, it gets pretty sparse for these factions, but there are some champions we can talk about. First being Tyrell in the High Elves, who does have a 50% turn meter drop on the A3 here. He also does dual purpose or I guess triple purpose, because he has decreased defense AoE if you need that for the stage 16 strategy. Notice I didn't bring a debuffer for stage 20 because I don't want to do damage to the Spiderlings. I want them to stay alive and burn, so I didn't bring a debuffer at all. And Tyrell also has decreased attack on the A1, so in case the spider gets a turn, you won't just instantly wipe with your potentially squishy team. Aside from him, we do have Basilius Roanus, who does have a stun on a 4-turn cooldown that also depletes turn meter by 50% if the stun is not placed, which you can't stun bosses, therefore it is a stun on the Spiderlings, but a turn meter depletion on the boss. However, he is negative affinity for stage 16 and 20, so he may not be the best option, but if you're doing some other stage, you might be able to do dual purpose as your CC/turn meter control backup turn meter control champion. We already spoke about Armiger, of course, who on the A1, he reduces a turn meter by 30% if he crits, so he is a great option. We also have a rare in the Barbarians faction here of Soulbound Boyer, who on a 4-turn cooldown has a full turn meter depletion, and she also has an AoE on the A1, so she can be great in a stun set. I have one built for Secret Rooms, but unfortunately I have her built for damage because I want to get some utility out of her stun set for the Secret Rooms, not just stun. I want to get some damage out of her. Plus, she only needs 75% crit rate on all of her abilities because she has that bonus. And so she was actually killing the Spiderlings over time on stage 20, so I took her out of the team and put in Lonotharl, the ally attack. And lastly, for turn meter control, we do have to go back to the High Elves here because there is an uncommon that you might be able to use, more so if you're in the early game. I don't have one built, but Elf Guard on a 2-turn cooldown can reduce enemy turn meter by 50%. So if you build her relatively fast, maybe level 50, level 40, depending on how early you are in the game, you book her up with copies of herself, she can definitely do some work on a tournament like this just to keep the turn meter of the spider down. So 50% every 2 turns, which is probably one of the best controls in the 4 factions. In this case, because it is spider, poisons aren't as effective. She takes reduced damage for those, and HP burn is definitely the way to go. We already talked about Mordecai, who's in the Sacred Order, so he can definitely work if you have him, or if you use your starter code in the early game to pick him up, which I would definitely recommend if you're a new player. Aside from him, though, you do have somewhat limited options, but if you do have Elder Scarg. He can technically do AoE HP burn if he gets all the extra hits on the A2 here. So he just needs, the target just needs to have a bunch of debuffs on them, and then you get AoE HP burn and True Fear. And also, if we scroll down here, there is Harken Greatblade here who does a debuff spread. So if you have someone who can place HP burn on their A1 or a single target or something like that, then she can spread it to all of the spiderlings, and you can get AoE, effectively get AoE HP burn that way as well. For the debuffers, again, if you're going more of the stage 16 route, you have Deacon, who I used, but you also have the OG trifecta, that being Stag Knight here, who has decreased speed on the A1 as well as the decreased defense and decrease attack on the A2, 95% chance. So, but with Sniper, it becomes 100. You do have Tayrel, who we mentioned in the High Elves, and of course, you do have your free champion of War Maiden. Again, negative affinity for stage 16 and stage 20. But if you're doing this in the earlier stages or something, or a better stage with that suits her affinity, again, AoE defense break on a 3-turn cooldown, she can definitely do the job. Now, with those out of the way, let's talk about keeping your team alive. And so the supports for this, there's a lot of options, so let's go into each of the factions respectively, starting with the Bannerlords. For supports, honorable mention to Sethalia, because she does have a full cleanse on a 2-turn cooldown. So if you specifically have one champion tanking damage every 2 turns, she can basically heal them back to full and place block debuffs on them, so they won't take any poisons when they are hit subsequently. So that can be relatively effective. Not really useful in a lot of other areas, but you do have Manaya, who similarly can do a pretty decent heal on her A3 here. Yep, on a 4-turn cooldown, so pretty decent there. Block debuffs as well. You have Sigmund, the High Shield, who can do decrease attack and provoke, so he can basically steal the aggro from the minions and put them on himself, and he also provides a shield and strengthen. So if you did that fusion, or if you've pulled him, he can definitely do some work to protect your team. Also, honorable mention to Helior, who's kind of like a mini miscreated monster, where he does have the ability to place a shield based off the damage inflicted. So if he does hit all of the spiderlings, you're going to have a pretty decent shield if you build him with a little bit of crit rate. But he also has this cool A3 here, where he can transfer all debuffs from all enemies to the target enemy, in this case the spider. So if you have a bunch of poisons on one of your tanks, he can basically strip them all off on a 3-turn cooldown and throw them back on the spider. Again, poison doesn't really affect her that much, but it's better than your champions taking them. And rounding out the legendaries, of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Raglan here, who does have the full cleanse on a 4-turn cooldown with a big heal, so that can keep your team alive. And she also has the 2-turn cooldown of reviving an ally. So if anyone goes down, she can pick them up with the full turn meter, and they're basically good to go once again. Moving down to the epics, we do have Archmage Helmet here, who is a champion obtainable from the Dune Tower normal secret rooms. Most notably does have the stun here on the A2, where he will attack one enemy and then attack all other enemies if the first attack is critical. So you do need to build him with full crit rate. He's relatively fast as well. And he has a chance to 75% chance to stun the minions, which again reduces the damage you take, the poisons you take, but also more importantly, animation time. So if they're stunned, they don't attack, and you save a lot of time that way. So stuns are the way to go if you can get away with it. After him, we do have an honorable mention of Oathbound, who again, if you just need someone to place decrease attack to keep your team alive, if and when the spiderlings take turns, then he can be that champion for you. Ursula the Mourner, if you need a reviver, so again, someone to keep your team alive, but she does also have decrease attack, AoE, 100% chance. So if you do have her, she's definitely good for the job. However, she has this conditional revive, meaning that she will use it even if no one is dead, which is not the best. So she may not revive when you want her to, but if everyone is alive, you are getting increased defense and strengthen, which again makes you take less damage, combined with a decreased attack on the AoE. So she can do a lot of protection to keep people from dying in the first place. And lastly, honorable mention here is Giscard the Sigiled, who does have increased defense and increased attack, again making your team take less damage. And he also has an AoE provoke, not 100% chance, but he places a shield on himself, so he takes a little bit less damage. And again, he can steal the aggro from whoever your tank might be, and so you can spread the damage around. For the High Elves, definitely want to talk about Deliana, one of our free daily login champions, and she is most notable in a retaliation set, because if you can get her to place the leech on some of the spiderlings, and she just keeps retaliating with War Master, she will heal herself back up, and she's Force Affinity, which is negative for stage 16 and stage 20, so she she could run her in a stun set if you want to go that route, but if you run her in retaliation, she can just keep counterattacking, and then she can heal herself up with the leech, and she will be the spiderling tank. So that is a very, very effective strategy, more so for the early game. Aside from her, we do have Tatura Rhymehide, a previous fusion, who can provide block debuffs and increased defense, again take less damage, and you will also be immune to the poisons. But more notably, he does have this ability here, similar to Helior, where he places a shield depending on the damage inflicted. So he will place a massive shield on himself by hitting all of the spiderlings, and he will put perfect veil on all of the allies, meaning that the spiderlings will be forced to attack him, and again he's under a giant shield, and so he will basically be immune from the damage. And again, he does have block debuff, so he could also be immune from the poisons. And the passive here, there is a chance that he could also CC and freeze the spiderlings after they attack, which is not as valuable because again they already took their turn, they already did the animations, but it is a nice backup so that they won't take a second turn if they're still alive. After Tatura, if we drop all the way down to the rares, honorable mention to one of the best early game champions in the game is Apothecary, who again has the increased speed, turn meter fill, very effective for making your team take more turns than the spiderling, or more turns than the spider queen. But he does also have this in case of emergency heal that can be critical on an ally. So if they're getting low, your tank is getting low, he will pop them with the heal every 2 turns. So very nice on that heal, kind of like a baby Cythalia if you want to think of it that way. And of course, Reliquary Tender, one of the best rares in the game, or the best rare supports in the game. Revive on a 5-turn cooldown, 1 ally with 30% HP, 30% turn meter, which unfortunately is really weak in terms of a revival, because they're most likely just going to drop back down dead again. But nonetheless, it is a revive if you need to pick up someone important. But more notably, she does have this full cleanse with continuous heals on all allies on a 3-turn cooldown. For Sacred Order, there are a lot of good options if you do happen to have them, like Roshkard and Sir Nicholas if you want to go more of the unkillable type routes as far as reducing the damage you take. Glacea has potential for an AoE freeze. You don't really want counterattackers because that will take more time, because you're going to be counterattacking the spiderlings, and it's just not, it's a way to stay alive if you want to, or do some damage if you want to kill them, but it's going to take a lot of time. It's not worth it. If you do have Venus, I forgot Venus, she can also be your AoE HP burn, and she does also have decreased defense and weaken. Bivald of the Thorn here can provoke on the A2 here and also place a leech, so again your team can heal up, and he can also place them on weak hits, so he is affinity friendly effectively, but he does also place a shield and heal your team on the A3, so again he's a great support for keeping your team running. And if we scroll down to the epics here, who there are a lot of them, but a lot of them are also trash, but Sanguinia here does have the block debuffs and continuous heal, so on a 3-turn cooldown, so you can again block the poisons potentially and also provide some healing. But if your team does get poisons on them, she does have a full cleanse on the A3 here, where she removes all debuffs from all allies, and she transfers debuffs from herself to the target, which in this case will be the Spider Queen. So pretty decent full cleanser and support. For the Barbarians, we already talked about Scylla the Drakes. I want to honorably mention Valkyrie. Again, counterattack is not the best as far as animation time, so the runs will take longer if you're counterattacking all the minions. But nonetheless, Valkyrie does provide a massive shield that can keep your team alive. Ursuga's passive can prevent some damage being taken if the Spider Queen crits or if the minions crit. Your Carl can do some AoE freeze, again reducing animation time and reducing their damage that you take. And you do also have Skytouch Shaman, who does provide a lot of healing with her passive and block debuffs and revive on death, but you do need some way to keep her alive and potentially get rid of the fear on her that she puts on herself. So she can do some healing, but she may also kill herself, so be forewarned. Alrighty, so that's going to do it for today's video. If you are going for this tournament, let me know what team you're going to use in the comment section down below. And if you're skipping the fusion, this is definitely the opportunity to snag some Relentless gear, so I do recommend going for it if you can. As always, if you found this video helpful, then be sure to hit that like button down below. And if you enjoyed the video, then be sure to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one. We do love challenge tournaments on this channel. It's always fun to theorycraft and come up with teams, so there will definitely be more coming down the pipeline as they pop up. So thanks for watching, and have a good one.